Hey folks, it is Ask a Flower Farmer Wednesday, and it's your friend Lisa Mason Ziegler, and really glad to be here with you today. I don't know about where you are, but in southeastern Virginia, we are just having a lovely fall time. I mean, it's like cool nights, coolish days with maybe some warm afternoons, and not only is it super great for people, but this is like weather made for cool flowers. So I'm just really enjoying that time here. And so the way this works is I meet you here every Wednesday at 11:30 Eastern time and do my best to answer as many questions as I can. And if you want your question answered, you need to put it in the bubble with the question mark down below. That way I don't really have to scroll through everybody's names and perhaps miss your question. So y'all start adding them up down there. And I just wanted to make a couple of announcements. So y'all, you may or may not know, I do the Flower Farmer show over on Clubhouse. Clubhouse is just a phone app, y'all. All you have to do is download the app and you can join Clubhouse. And I have a club over there called the Flower Farmer Show. And I'm there at 1 o'clock every Wednesday after I eat my lunch after this. And today I am talking about leaves, mulch, and compost. And so I'm just kind of sharing what I do and how I use those things. So you can join me over there. And I also wanted to show you my bag. This is our Gardener's Workshop tote bag. And this is what I actually carry. My laptop little case is in here, as well as my handy dandy business book that I take with me everywhere I go. So you can find these on our website. They're like $20, y'all. And they're super heavy duty, and I love it because I have bigger ones. But this limits what I can put in here. So this is like my business bag, and would love for you guys to check that out, and you can find it over at thegardenersworkshop.com. I do carry Tucker's treats in there also when I'm bringing him to work, which is all the time, right? So y'all add your questions in down there. And you know, I posted a picture this morning of what my cool flower garden is looking like right about now. We still have not mulched the pathways with leaves, just because the leaves are just now starting to fall here. And this week, Bobo and Christine and I are planting a few shrubs and just kind of tidying up those last minute cool flower plantings, planting a few more shrubs. Then next week, I'm hoping we're going to start our leaf forage, where we go out and collect bags of leaves. So the garden will get a lot prettier really quick. Having those brown leaves, that earthy look to the garden, makes my heart sing, y'all. But this morning, as I was looking at that garden, I was just really marveling at these cool season hardy annuals, which so many of us, me included, we just really kind of forgot about this group of flowers, right? And I often get asked, why did that happen? Why did our grandmothers know to do this? And then it kind of got lost. So I'm 60. It got lost in my parents' generation. And what happened during my parents' generation is it was almost like people felt like they were climbing the ladder up to not have to grow their own stuff. You know, my parents, when they were growing up, they had a garden because that's what put food on the table, right? Well, that didn't. And when they became adults, you know, canned food became available in the stores. Global stuff started, you know, the bad stuff we're dealing with now started happening, and people kind of disconnected from gardens. And now, of course, there's this resurge of gardening and farming and all of that good stuff. Well, some of the things that didn't get re-grasped, one of them is the cool season hardy annuals. And that's because they kind of get planted at an awkward time. And garden centers and nurseries just don't offer them because people don't buy them, because they don't know how this all works. And anyway, so that's what all led to me writing that book, Cool Flowers. And I was just kind of grateful this morning. It wasn't really cold. I mean, we're still only in the 50s or 40s at night. So my little seedlings were just so happy this morning. And it's just so wonderful to have plants that can take the cold. I mean, they'll go through winter, freeze. They'll be popsicles by January. And that's their jam. That's what they really, really love. So if you don't know about cool flowers, or you're not familiar, or you're not sure, first off, everybody can plant cool flowers. We all just plant them on different timing, perhaps. There's resources in my profile. I have tons of resources in addition to my book, Cool Flowers. And there's a book study that goes with the book, which is free. And if you buy your book from somewhere else, we still want you to have it. If you go to our website, thegardenersworkshop.com, and go to the Learning Center, which is where we have tons of resources, go to my Field and Garden blog and go to the Cool Flower category. First thing up is the Cool Season Flower Chronicles. And there's a planting guide. There's all kinds of information there. We'd love for you to have it all. So let's take a look at questions now that we've got some. So Fairy Creek Flowers asks, what conditions do you wait for in order to stop watering cool flowers? And you're welcome. So we water at planting time, and then we only water again before we go into winter if we don't get rain, or if we have super windy conditions, because that really dries not only the vegetation out, it's just tough on them, that dries the soil out too, right? But once freezing happens, once freezing temperatures at night are happening on a regular basis, our water's cut off. I mean, our well is drained, and they're pretty much out there on their own. So once we dip below that 28 degrees at night, I use those numbers, 25 to 28 degrees, because when we reach those, we're pretty much down for winter, meaning they're going to stay cold. If you just wait for one freeze night, you can still have high temperatures. So we wait for that in the 20s before we actually do that, and that's when we stop. Have I grown Vandenium for cutting? I have not grown that. So I cannot offer you any advice or information about that. Sorry, press send too soon. Also, do I need to wait longer to put punched flowers out? I waited about a week. Pinched flowers out. I waited about a week after pinching. What you're looking for, what I look for when I pinch before I plant, meaning I pinch them while they're still in the soil blocks, is I look for the plant to have recovered. And that recovery sign are little sprouts. So like if it's a snapdragon and you got that little single stem and you pinch right below the bottom two leaves, usually within a week you'll see little nubs coming from where that leaf attaches to that stem. And that to me says it's recovered and it's time to plant. So no, you can plant as soon as you feel like the plants are healthy. Jennifer Lynn, planting my cover crop. What is your thoughts on leaving cover crops in the walkway? I like the look of green walkways, but not sure if that would be okay. Jennifer, that is such a great question. So back in my earlier days, I don't know where you live, but if you're in the lower 3/4 of the United States, which means we have pretty serious summers, long summers. For us, I thought back in the beginning of time when I was first starting to grow and starting to ramp up, I thought I'll plant cover crops in the pathways. And that's easy to do in the fall, to winter over. In fact, I took a picture this morning of our crimson clover in our no-till area, that the pathways also have clover. Well, first off, that clover dies very quickly once the heat comes in probably May, and then you're walking on it. So the combination of those two things just kills that. Well, we, in our long, hot season, I have never found a cover crop that can outcompete what naturally grows up, which is we call weeds, but it's a mixture of grass, every kind of weed known to mankind. So what would happen is I would plant my pathways in the appropriate cover crop for that season. But what naturally occurs, the native weeds, would outcompete them. So we just allow that to happen. We don't plant anything in our pathways for our summer garden. We don't use leaves in our pathways in the summer because we don't have leaves available. So we make our beds, the pathways are just soil, and within 2 weeks after planting and warm season starts, they are totally covered with vegetation, and we just mow it every week. So I don't think you have to really plant anything, and it just really depends on where you are. The power story, do you grow hellebores? Oh, do I grow hellebores? So there is, if you go over to my blog, Field and Garden, on thegardenersworkshop.com, and there's a shade garden category on the blog. There is I think there's a couple articles. I actually did a free webinar, and I am not sure if that webinar request is in my profile, but if it's not, you can email thegardenersworkshop.com, info@thegardenersworkshop.com, and request the link to get that webinar. It's awesome. Yeah, we grow hellebores are a huge cash crop on our farm. For all those years we were selling to florists and doing supermarket bouquets, and they're a super great crop. So if so, recommendations on germination techniques, I would never start hellebores from seed. You always buy plants. When you see, like right now, I was just looking in our planting bed this morning, we have all these little hellebores that are about this tall. Well, that's a year old. They are very slow growers, very slow germinators. You definitely should invest in starter plants. There's a lot of places to get it, and the webinar tells you all that information. When do you bring your mother plant Salvia Lacampia in? That's a really great question. So we have 5 big containers because we have 3 Salvia Lacampias and 2 Mexicanas. And Bobo and I were just discovering that. So when we drain our wells and when we put row covers up, when that 28 degrees and it's kind of looking that way, once winter just comes, because there's nothing worse than leaving your mother plants outside and having them killed. So, and we just put them in a corner in our garage. We don't water them. Like right now, we've watered them really deeply. Bobo worked on the containers a couple of days ago. We trimmed all the growth, the growth that had bloomed. It's got a nice canopy of short vegetation right now that may or may not look good at the end of the winter. But we watered them really well, and we'll pull them in, and then they do not get any additional watering. So someone's asking favorite woodies, perennials, branches for forcing. I don't really grow a lot of woodies, but I will tell you that hydrangeas are at the top of the list, and we grow several different kinds. It is an amazing bouquet filler at different times of the year. I mean, you can allow them to move through the season if they're planted in the proper space. I also didn't I do a webinar, Suzanne, on hydrangeas too? I think there's one of those. So you can go to our Field and Garden blog, and there's several articles about it. But hydrangeas are so underused as filler. I mean, we would never be able to make our bouquets in the month of August and September, I don't think, without hydrangeas. So mop heads, limelight, the paninculatas, and so yes, hydrangeas. I don't really grow a lot of woodies other than that. And for perennials, peonies are at the top of our list. And again, we just don't grow many perennials and woodies because I'm a small space farm. I only have an 1.5 acre garden when we were in high production. And we planted stuff that produced all season long. So we very limited our perennials and woodies because I didn't really have space to give, because they take real estate 24/7, right? I mean, they are there all the time. But hydrangeas definitely are worth their weight, as well as peonies are. And I don't force branches. We just didn't we just don't have those types of plants. Taking the class now, I'm turning my yard into my garden. Good for you. Would it be okay to rip grass up and mix in compost and cover with silage tarps? Would that be a good start? So Chris, I think this week you should be in the building a garden class this week, or building beds and building a working cutting garden. You can do that, but what you have to know is if you have perennial grass, which is like Bermuda grass, that will all come back in the spring. And you can surely, I would just even say you might be better to just cover the soil with the silage tarp. Silage tarps don't work nearly as well during the winter as they do during the summer when it gets really hot. However, if you have a really sunny, bright winter, that may help some, and then follow those other steps after you've killed that grass off. But if you rip the grass out, those perennial roots are still there, so I would leave the vegetation attached to it, and give that a try. Noble flowers. I have a couple of eucalyptus trees in pots that are about 2 years old. I want to put them in the ground. What is the best time? I'm in zone 9. So I don't really know that I would guess eucalyptus is winter hardy where you are, since you're in zone 9. And it's always best to plant anything that survives your winters and is a perennial of any kind, and that would mean any perennials, trees, and shrubs. It's always best to plant them as you're going into your cold period, because that allows them to really build strong roots instead of growing vegetation. So I would say now is the time. Let's see where we are. Wait, I hit the wrong one. All right. What kind of shrubs are you planting right now? So we are just beefing up our native border, and we're putting in actually a little flower bed around the front of the house, which is also native. So it's more of the same things that we have already planted. Service berries are in there. There is oak leaf, hydrangea. Trying to think. There's some viburnums, the native viburnums. And so, when the native border that we have around our property, we're always adding to that. We're putting in more American hollies, more, I just put in service berries, chokeberries, sorry, I'll have to think, cypress trees. These are all things that support beneficial insects, wildlife. Birds are the number one thing that we can really add to our garden. Birds, when they have baby nests full of babies, they eat literally thousands of insects every week. They are the visitors you want. You want them to come and live and be in your garden. And by planting native plantings, which means that your native creatures can benefit from that either through food or habitat, you just increase it all. So we have seen such amazing diversity of increased populations, from native bees to birds to our beneficial insects like wheel bugs or assassin bugs, and all of these good guys. And it's because they're living in our permanent areas, and we just absolutely love it. We're having 70-degree days, 28-degree nights. Gosh, you must be in Virginia. All the flowers I pinched have died. Oh, I'm confused on watering and not watering. So I don't know when you pinched or what the status of that was. So the way that we practice pinching is, I've only done it in soil block, so I cannot give any advice if you do it in a plug tray. It's just different ways of growing and different status of health of those transplants. We pinch only in the tray before we plant this time of the year. And we wait for them to recover, as I was mentioning earlier for someone that was asking about that. And the way that I know that they've recovered is by watching for, right where I pinched, for sprouts to start. They don't have to grow up, but the fact that they're sprouting means, okay, they're over the shock of me pinching their top half off, right? So we didn't pinch any of our cool flowers this year before we planted them because we had an opportunity to plant a little earlier than we expected, and if we'd have pinched, that would have delayed that for at least a week. So anything that we will plan on pinching will now not get pinched until very early spring, which for us is like the 1st of March. You know, once we start having the kind of weather we're having right now, well, not this warm, but the afternoons kind of get warmish and the sun is shining. And you go out there and you just love pulling back the covers and doing a little whole weeding. That's when we would pinch, is when the weeds start growing again and when the plants start to show signs of growing. And that's when we would pinch. And my method of pinching has always been, we pretty much pinch 50% of crops. First off, that guards you against any problems based on pinching, as far as, something croaking. We don't normally have that happen, but you never know. But the other reason that I really like to do it is when you pinch, you delay the bloom because you're pinching off the central stem down low, and that encourages and induces branching earlier. That means that more sprouts will come quicker and you'll get more nicer, stronger, straighter stems. Well, I want both. I want early blooms and I want more stems. So that has always kind of been my method, is when we are going to pinch, I pinch half of the crop. And we usually will do that in the garden in very early spring for cool flowers. So let's see. And so wait a minute, here's more questions. All the flowers I pinched have died. I'm confused on watering. So it 100% depends on where you're located. Here in southeastern Virginia, we water in our cool flower seeds or transplants, whichever we're planting. Water them super well when we plant them. And then typically we get regular rain. But if you're not getting enough significant rain every week, then you need to hand water. And we do not hook our irrigation up before we go into winter for this fall planted group. We water them by hand. And we would only give additional waterings to those is if they don't get that kind of treatment. Because what you have to remember is that it's cooler outside, y'all. The ground does not dry out. That's the big plus. It's not that cool season hardy annuals need less water. It's that the conditions are more conducive to provide that for them better than in the middle of the summer. So when you do a thorough watering when you plant, and if you're mulching, that helps. If you're using film or mulch, that will make your watering job or rain last longer, hold longer. So I hope that helps you. Oh, I think wait a minute. I X'd the last one. I thought there was one about snapdragons. Here we go. I'm in zone 6A. Can I still put snapdragon seeds in the ground and other cold hardy annuals? You would not direct seed snapdragons out in the garden, not with much success. And as I have shared before, and I would highly recommend you go to our website, go to the blog, Field and Garden, go to the cool flower category and get those resources and watch the cool season flower series videos. You have more wiggle room in planting outside in fall with transplants than you do direct seeding. People always think it's the direct absolute opposite of that. You still have to have warm days to get seeds to sprout. You can't put seeds outside when it's cold day and night and expect them to sprout. So planting late for direct seeding, it really does not work very well. You're better off to start those seeds indoors. Snapdragons doesn't matter. They always want to be started indoors. But you would be better to start your stuff indoors for those things that will start well that way. And if you are on the edge like we are, where we're still having kind of warm days, but not really the best case, if you direct seed outside those things that do well that way, You can hoop and row covers, what I'm standing in front of here, and create a warmer environment during the day. It blocks the wind and concentrates the sun. That will really help do that. So, everybody tends to assume that when you're late, it's best just to get the seeds out in the garden, which typically leads to more failure. And then people just kick cool flowers to the curb. And I'll tell you the other thing, as in week 1 of Flower Farming School is just passed, and now we're in week 2. We're building beds and learning all about that kind of stuff and maintenance and how to maintain a garden. And I'll tell you what I shared, that I've shared in other places, that, that big jumbo calendar that I talk about in my books and in school, it is, and I will tell you what brand it is, so get your pencil out. It's the brain of our farm. And that is, if you are late this year on cool flowers, you need to order a calendar. But I'm going to tell you about the calendar that I use and how I use it, and figure out right now for 2022, when were you supposed to have started those seeds? When were you supposed to have ordered those seeds to have the seeds, to start them at the right time, to plant at the right time, or to direct seed at the right time? Y'all, it's not that the rest of us that are doing it on time are like, smarter. It's that most of us are going by a record. And the record that I use is I use an at a glance. That's a brand name. And I do not have, this is not an affiliate link or recommendation. It's at a glance brand, and it is what they call the jumbo wall calendar. And I always, before I hit the buy button, I always go down and look to see what the specs are to make sure that each individual block for each day is 2 inches by 4 inches. And that way it allows you to write all kinds of stuff. And I'm not going to tell you any more about that. That's one of the things we go deep on in Flower Farming School, is that calendar is the brain of my farm. I have like 8 years of that. The calendar's big. I mean, it's only 1 month at a time, but each day is like this big. So you can do everything, your seed starting plan, when you should order, no matter what you should do. And so when I go to plan my year every January, which is when I do that, is I put up a big table and get all those calendars out and flip them all to January and look and see, what am I supposed to start? What have I started in January for the last 8 years? And then flip to February, then flip to March. And it's just amazing. But the most important thing is to mark your dates of when cool flowers are supposed to be planted for you, where you are, because none of us remember, because typically we're starting the seeds, ordering the seeds when we're still in the middle of summer, Y'all, it's just so much simpler than everybody wants to make it. And Flower Farming School is pretty simple stuff. It's just bringing it all together and helping people to understand this is what it takes to start a successful professional business. No, it's not more complicated than this. There's no more bells and whistles than this. This is it. And because a lot of this stuff is so ground floor simple, people don't do it. And that's their problem. So, let's see what else we have here. And I'll take one more question. In your making bed videos, are you laying water lines under there? What is the diameter? Are you in Flower Farming School, Flower Lover? In making your bed, are you laying water too? So yeah, we always, in any of the videos you see of us making beds, our bed maker, or even when we were making the beds by hand, we use the Bio 360 film, which is the biodegradable film that we absolutely love. You can find that on our website, along with a video that shows you how to put it down by hand. But we lay under it irrigation, and you can find irrigation from your irrigation suppliers. They're all over the place. Dripworks, Berry Hill Irrigation. It just depends on where you live. You want to order from the closest place to you. Spring Hill, New Jersey, I'm not going to put a link on here. I mean, it takes away the comments as soon as I end this video, but you can find it at the Big A. That's where most people find it. So you can find it. Email us if you can't find it. So you should be able to find it, I think. All right, friends, it is 12 o'clock. Remember to join me over on Clubhouse at 1 o'clock. We'll be talking about leaves, mulch, compost, and kind of how I use that, because that's another big misunderstanding that people have. We don't ever add leaves to our soil. We use them as mulch. Anyway, we'll talk about all of that today. And friends, until we meet again, don't forget to get your tote bag, y'all. We're doing kind of a test marketing thing. If people don't take off with them, we're not going to carry them. And I love that thing, y'all. Help me. The girls don't want to keep it. Ciao.